Now, the Home Office has U-turned on plans to hike the family visa salary threshold to £38,700.
Well, earlier this month, the Home Secretary James Cleverly told the Commons that the threshold for a family visa would rise from £18,600 to £38,700 next spring, with the aim of reducing the number of people coming into the UK.
But now it will increase to £29,000 instead in the spring.
Yeah, and this comes as the government has been warned that its ban on overseas care staff bringing dependents to the UK is catastrophic. Well, GB News' political correspondent Catherine Forster has more. In fact, before we have more, can you explain what's going on? This is crazy, isn't it?
It's all a bit chaotic, isn't it? Basically, it was only on the beginning of December that the Home Office announced a package of measures to bring the levels of net migration from the current 750,000 people coming in legally a year down by 300,000. One of the measures that they announced was this change to the minimum income requirement. Basically, that's the amount of money that a household has to earn before somebody already living here can bring their partner or other family member into the UK. It was 18,500. The government were planning to double it to nearly 39,000 from the spring with not much notice at all. There was huge outcry. There was probably going to be a legal challenge as well, saying this is going to mean that thousands of people, families will be separated and this is just not right. Then yesterday, it rather chaotically emerged that the government had a bit of a rethink. So now they've sort of split the difference between the nearly 19,000 it was, the nearly 39,000 which it was going to be. They've said from the spring it's going to be 29,000 and it will go up, ultimately, they say, to 38,700.
But they're going to do it incrementally.
In stages. So that might seem very, very sensible. Of course, what it's done is it's managed to upset a lot of people because it upset a lot of people initially when people were saying this is cruel, this is very unfair. And now they've rode back a bit. They've upset a whole different set of people who are saying, why are you going soft on this? So, and even within the Conservative Party, you've got people like Damien Green, who was former immigration minister, saying this is very sensible. People on the right of the party, like Jonathan Gullis, saying deeply disappointing and undermines our efforts. But I think worth noting that of this 300,000 that this whole package of measures is due to bring immigration down by, the original change was only predicted to bring down the numbers by 10,000. So in the grand scheme of things, this measure, which has upset a lot of people, is not actually a very big deal.
It's still quite a big jump, though, isn't it, Catherine? So was it £18,000 before? So
yeah.
That was the threshold. Now up to 29,000.
Yeah.
I mean, some people would argue that still shuts out a lot of people, doesn't it?
Yes. Very important low-paid jobs.
You know, for care working, exactly.
Yes, they will.
The NHS.
And there's another slightly separate row going on as well that you just touched on there about healthcare visas for particularly care worker staff. We know there's a huge shortage of care workers because you can pretty much earn more going working in your local supermarket than you can as a care worker. It's an incredibly difficult, demanding job that these people do, and the government are banning overseas care staff from bringing their dependents in. So groups are saying this is going to be catastrophic, that the care system could potentially collapse. We already know it's on its knees. So another row there. So this is the problem as well, isn't it? We've got huge levels of net migration, the exact opposite of what the Conservatives spent 13 years promising. But at the same time, we've got these critical shortages in industries like the care sector. And we need people to do those jobs.
And at the same time, we seem to have politicians at the top making decisions and then rowing back on them almost straight away. It's extraordinary, isn't it? Catherine, thanks very much. Joining us now is Executive Director of Migration Watch, Dr. Mike Jones. What do you think of all of this, Mike?
Well, it's chaotic, and it shows that the government hasn't really thought through its plans properly. I think the plan to reduce the number of dependents with, postgraduate students, social care workers, I think that's very sensible. But obviously, with family visas, that will only make a difference to the margins. I mean, ultimately, you need a cap on student visas and work visas. The government promised a policy of attracting the best and the brightest, reducing numbers and reducing the number of low-skilled workers. But obviously, they failed on that.
But there are critical shortages, as we were just discussing, in really important sectors such as the NHS and social care. So can we expect people from overseas to come and work in our social care sector or our National Health Service if they can't bring their families? Surely we couldn't expect people to come over here alone.
Well, the concept of a shortage in economics is quite problematic because, you know, immigrants don't just produce goods and services, they consume them as well. So if you import, you know, say 500,000 people to fill 500,000 vacancies, what happens? You create the same number of vacancies again. And this is what we saw during the New Labour years. It's what we saw during the early years of the Cameron government. You know, ultimately, if you want people to fill these roles, you need to raise wages to the market clearing wage to attract sufficient people to that position, and you need to improve work conditions. But the government doesn't want to do this.
Well, it doesn't seem to know what it wants at the moment, does it? We'll have to leave it there. Thank you very much indeed for joining us.